Hello, everybody. Today we welcome Faye Davies to the podcast. Faye is a managing director of Burrell Foley Fisher, a highly respected specialist conservation architect who has spent over 2 decades working on some of the UK's most sensitive and complex historic sites. Her portfolio spans an extraordinary range from timber frame Tudor buildings and medieval castles through to Georgian townhouses, Victorian theatres and significant 20th century architecture. What ties all of Faye's work together is a design philosophy built on elegant simplicity, careful detailing and truly considered interventions. So really hope you enjoy my conversation with Faye Davies. Faye, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you. So can you tell us where it all started for you?
I got into architecture relatively, I sort of say late on, when you were picking your sort of subjects and things. I had wanted to do fine art. I was doing art history, technology, general studies, and maths A levels, and then decided, having gone and looked at sites at university and university courses, it was between ceramics and architecture, and I ended up going to Dundee, and the guy who showed us around kind of sold the course to us. Now, the Duncan and Jordan Stone College of Art is a massive concrete brutalist building. We had fantastic uh, you could have a desk, a proper computer, proper drawing board, and none of the other places were offering you a sort of dedicated desk space. And he kind of sold architecture to me, and that's how I ended up being an architect. In regards to historic buildings and how I've fallen into doing conservation, I think where I ended up doing my year out, there was a lot of conservation historic work at Wright and Wright Architects. The course in Dundee heavily involved doing adaptations to historic buildings and existing buildings as well as new build elements.
All right.
And then over the course of my career, I've just managed to, I've gravitated towards the history aspect of things. And art history, when I was doing my A levels, is my favourite subject. But what's quite funny is contemporary architecture was my worst subject at art history.
All right.
So it's but yeah, I've fallen into I've just kind of fallen into it, and over the years sort of developed and honed in those skills. And I kind of live, breathe, sleep, especially sort of conservation, historic buildings, rescuing buildings, adapting buildings. It's kind of how it's played out, I think. I've been quite lucky, I think, as well.
Yeah. And once those historic buildings grab you, that you can't let go, can you? You know, they're just so fascinating and they're so intriguing.
Yeah, and it's not just about the fabric and the buildings, but it's also the social history and the
Yeah.
people who've used those buildings, which I find fascinating. It's one of those. It's just a passion. Yeah. It's good that I do a job which I love. So
I know. We worked on a project in Covent Garden and it was a 4-story townhouse. And God knows how much it would be worth. We're talking millions, right in the middle of Covent Garden. But in the Georgian period, it was a slum and it was a no-go
yeah,
area. And
yeah,
this particular property had up to 35 families living in it.
yeah,
And here it is now, this really salubrious, grand building that you just could not imagine that this
yeah,
is what it was like. And there were a couple of murders committed in the house as well. And that's part of it, isn't it? This is absolutely
yeah.
fascinating.
I think also what I find fascinating, especially now, is repurposing buildings for 20th century use. It's one of those things which it's a challenge with some of the listing and significance of buildings, but also I think people who work in our industry need to learn to adapt and need to learn to adapt quicker, and also to do things which not necessarily have to be reversible, but that it's future proofing buildings
Yeah.
for the next generation. And also, I think you can do things up too well. It's about getting that fine tuning of doing it and so it doesn't look too polished. Sometimes I think sometimes they're overdone.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I absolutely agree. So just going back onto your tracking back to your training, and you
mm,
qualified as a RIBA registered specialist conservation
yeah.
architect. Tell us about that, and what's the difference between a standard architect and a RIBA specialist conservation architect?
So I had been working on listed buildings since I said my part 1 year out. I'd been working on listed buildings, and then I had the opportunity, which the practice actually financed, was to go back and do another degree in conservation part time. So I went to the Architectural Association to do the diploma in conservation of historic buildings. That was a 2 year part-time course. So every Friday I had out the office, and even though I knew quite a lot already, it took me places that I wouldn't normally get to go. That's the other things I like about historic buildings, is getting to see things that normal people wouldn't get to see.
Mm,
And that was hard going because I was working at the same time. So I was trying to do 5 days in 4 days, and then I'd do all the coursework on top of what the normal, what my paid work was. But learning from other individuals, they had really good lecturers come in. We went on quite a lot of site visits, fine tuning how you write reports, what you see. Um, but I guess with conservation, a lot of it's to do with um, you know, you have to, every day is a school day. You have to learn, and you have to be able to want to continue and learn, because there's things which do change over time. Different methods of doing things. In the 80s, what they did was spray a lot of stone buildings with waterproofing agents and things. That's not allowed anymore. So you've got to work out and adapt as you go along as well. But that's how I've sort of ended up becoming a specialist conservation architect. You had to do case studies
right.
um, to get on the RIBA conservation register. So you had to prove that you had done that work, and you were capable of doing that work, and you had a good knowledge and background in it. And I think, like I say, that extra diploma or degree in conservation just helped as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Wonderful. So your portfolio, it ranges, it's quite a wide range, isn't it?
yeah.
From Tudor buildings to 20th century architecture. And do you like having that mix from one extreme to another?
I think I think there's a lot of people who are, very good at just doing Georgian or very good at doing Victorian buildings. I think what myself and the practice does is very much look at each individual building in its context, relating to its significance, where you can do interventions, what things need to change. I think what makes it exciting is the wide range, and you're not just doing Georgian sash window repairs or re-roofing. Um, I like to work on buildings which are on the risk register and have no use or purpose. So clients who come along and want to challenge the typology of that building, it maybe was a pub and now they want to make it into a museum, or maybe it was for instance, a glass house and they want to make it into a food and beverage and event space. I think that's what we do well. We respond to the brief, the business plan, and also what the people want in terms of the general public as well.
Mm,
A lot of our clients are local authority clients, cultural based projects, charities, and arts based as well. So they've got those clients are quite ambitious, and but the unfortunate thing is that they don't often have a lot of money. So that's also the challenge. The
yeah.
other thing
Yeah.
which I'm finding as we're going forwards into the next few years and next few decades is, I think, sustainability in conservation is quite key. And I think as an industry, we're very far behind. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that over the next 2 to 5 years, and how we make sure that we integrate that into historic buildings and it not just be an add-on or a nice to have. We actually mean it. So.
Yeah, so you're talking about when it has to be adapted for modern purposes,
Yeah.
that's got to be sustainable. And
Yes.
in the past, it
Yeah.
may not have been so much because it
Well,
was
yeah.
all about design and how incredible it looks, and
Yeah.
possibly it's
And
not.
also people think that, oh, you can get you know, dispensation. I think we hide behind that somewhat. Um, so I think we shouldn't be get looking for that. I think we should be pushing the boundaries, whether it be it in building regulations terms or whether it be in fabric and repair. Um, but yeah, I think it's going to be interesting in the next few years.
Yeah. And remind me, where is the practice?
We're based in London, but we work all over the country. I've got jobs in Scotland. We go down as far as Cornwall. We'll go anywhere basically. If it's in this interesting project, we will look at it and review it and work out how we can make it work. It's 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 the buildings which are interesting, but also the brief, which is quite important. Um, but we, like I say, we will work all over the country. Um, yeah.
And is a lot of this work, does it go out to tender?
Most of our work is one offer or due notices, so it goes, it goes onto the portal and we have to put a bid in like anyone else, um, based on our experience and whether or not we can deliver. I guess clients know our success rate. We're very successful at obtaining planning permissions and listed building consents for difficult projects, with complex briefs. But also one of our key things and how we go about making sure the vision of the client is realized is how we unlock a building and how we sort of unpick it and then put it back together again. It's one of the our key skills, I would say. And
Mm.
that might be down to how you get people through a building, how you get disabled access in. It's always quite a interesting challenge.
Yeah, because I
But
was thinking that if you're pitching for work in Scotland, so
yeah.
the logistics of that is going to be expensive for you to be able to
Hmm.
work in Scotland. So therefore, your price compared to somebody even working in Cumbria or something like that is
Yeah.
going to be so you've got to be able to offer something else, haven't you? To say, look,
Yeah.
yes, it's going to be a bit more expensive than somebody local to you. However, we're going to be able to give you this and this.
We have 3 jobs in Scotland at the minute. So yes, it's the same. It's is that we work those projects as leanly as we can. Um, whether or not, obviously I'm one of the biggest overheads in terms of my time, but a lot of the work can be done by people who aren't as expensive.
Right.
And I kind of am a bit of a nomad. I travel all over the place anyway, so it doesn't make much of a difference in terms of overheads. But those projects are all quite specialized projects as well, so it's nothing to do with one's a cinema, one's a community space, and the other one's a museum. So, um, and they all have their specialist aspects of um, concrete, glass, one of them is, and cinema design, which is one of
Yeah.
our portfolio strong points.
And when was the practice set up? How long has
It
it
was
been
set up
going?
in 1982, so 43 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I've been here 20 of those 43 years. So I started at part two and worked my way up through the practice. Um, yeah, so I've been there for quite a long time. This is when you're meant to
And
say you don't look that old.
you don't look that old.
Thanks.
That's incredible. That's amazing. And how many people are in the practice?
There's 35 of us. Yeah,
35. And
yeah.
it is always busy.
It's always busy. Yeah.
Wow.
Our portfolio, I'd done calcs last year, I think, I do an end of year roundup and then I do a beginning of the year sort of look forwards to the practice. And last year, I think 90% of our work was the conservation or retrofit, before retrofit was a buzzword in the architectural industry. We've been doing retrofit for 43 years before it became a thing. But it is our mainstay. We don't do a lot of new build. We do have new build, but a lot of it's adapting buildings basically, whether it be conservation or listed buildings. Some of it's just existing. And the same principles really apply even if it's an existing building. You can still learn a lot from conservation and listed buildings in regards to existing buildings and how you adapt, add on extensions, how you get M&E through a historic building, and an existing building is very much the same thing. Um, and also future proofing is also the same. I think one of the big things we do, obviously, we write conservation management plans for clients, and also management and maintenance plans as well. There's nothing worse than an architect finishing a job and then not telling you how to maintain it. So that's also quite
Right.
an important aspect of what we do, and what I help write on a daily basis. So
And do you also write heritage statements as well?
we
Assessments,
do, but we do. So we do, depending on the size of the job, either it becomes a heritage statement or a conservation management plan. Conservation management plan is like a really bulky heritage statement, but it includes policies about how you
Okay.
adapt a building in the future. But off the back, that's normally the first thing we do on a job is the conservation management plan heritage statement to work out what's significant, to then work out what we think you might be able to alter if you want to change it. So that informs the design. So you can't really start the design element of the works until you have the conservation management or heritage statement. And off the back of doing the proposals, you then write a heritage impact assessment
Yep.
based on what your proposals are and how you go about justifying your key moves, basically, be it
Yeah.
to the local conservation officer, planning department, or Historic England, which is the case of many of our projects. We have to take them along the journey with us.
And I was shocked to find out we had Maggie Henderson, who's a colleague and friend of mine, who's a buildings archaeologist, on the podcast, and she was saying that basically anybody can write a heritage statement. You can have a
Yeah,
nice sort of flashy practice and not actually know much about heritage significance
yeah,
at all, and put together a
yeah.
heritage assessment and an impact statement.
Hmm.
And this happens, doesn't it? I've come across a few projects where that piece of panelling there, it's lovely 17th century panelling. Oh no, we don't think it is. It hasn't been picked up on the heritage statement at all. And I said, well, it's absolutely a 17th century panelling,
Yeah,
and this is the reason why, and it's got to stay where it is. Well, we got listed building consent to remove it.
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
how can this happen? It's very,
It's
how does
shocking.
this happen?
I have a absolute bugbear about it because I think there's more people wanting to get into this field but don't know anything about it. You
Yeah,
think it's like, oh, it's the in thing at the minute. Obviously, more buildings are getting listed, there's more work in it. But at the same time, my worry for the industry is you've got cowboys coming along, for a better word of it, doing like you were saying, writing these reports, but it's not based on evidence. It's not based on, we do a lot of desktop survey. We go into the archives for us to be able to work out the historic development. And then you've got people deciding, as you say, what the age of the fabric is, who never doesn't don't even know. They've not got the
no,
experience.
no.
Um, yes, it's a worry for me as well. I understand that.
And then that gets put in front of the local authorities that look at it and say, oh, well, there's nothing really historically significant in this building. So, yeah, you can have consent.
Yeah, yeah. But it's even, and my worry is that sometimes they look at it and say, oh, but that was a later edition. But even the later editions still have significance.
Uh,
It's how you judge that significance and how it relates to the form of how it's developed. That's part of the history of it. Just because it was
yeah,
done in even the 1950s doesn't mean to say that just because it was done in the 1950s it should be automatically demolished or ripped out.
not at all.
Um, yeah, I think we're on the same page. It's
Yeah,
frustrating though. Well, I mean, the most frustrating thing is that each local authority is different. It should be based on policy, but when they come back, it's in terms of your if you were to get approval with conditions and you have to discharge the conditions, it depends on who you've got at the end of the day. So, yeah.
Yeah, can you explain give me an example how they could differ from one authority to another?
So, for instance, if you've got a conservation officer, I'm not going to name names, but if you've got a conservation officer who has a particular love of Art Deco buildings and their particular passion is tiles, which have been put into this Art Deco building, which is just say grade 2 listed, and you do have to do alterations to it. They might be more mindful to see you've got to keep that element of fabric, even though it could have a detrimental impact on the scheme as a whole, to take it off the risk register or something,
Mm.
because it's their personal preference. It's or it's subjective rather than based on a policy to say, like at least Historic England's conservation principles are quite clear in terms of what is high significance, low significance, or detrimental or neutral. I know there's quite some clear evidence then, but ultimately, at the end of the day, sometimes it is subjective, and you just have to prove why you need to alter something or why you need to keep it. Sometimes it's a battle with the clients, not just with the conservation officers. Some clients want to change things which you don't agree with, which is
Yes.
also educating them is quite difficult.
Yeah, I had somebody the other day that was wanting to swap their door out, and they said, "Oh, it's definitely a new door. It's definitely my carpenter's told me it's a new door." I said, "Oh, how experienced is your carpenter with dating historic joinery?" "Oh, he's worked on things in the past, and he definitely said it's new." I said, "Well, send some photos to me, and
Hmm.
I'll be able to pretty much tell you how old it is." And the building was 1770 or 1780. Anyway,
Hmm.
the photos came through, and it was an early 19th century door. So definitely a
Mm.
replacement door, but it had the astrical mouldings and historically significant.
Yeah.
And the client didn't like hearing that at
No,
all.
no, I've got some clients like that too.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah,
You think they'd be really pleased. Oh, is it what date's 1830? That's lovely. And so how can we restore it then? But it's not.
no,
They want something off the one of these fancy showrooms in London where you'll get a reproduction door
yeah. I probably
that is
fall to bits in 5 years.
yeah, exactly. I know. So going on from that then, where do you find the areas of your work where it can become a bit tricky? And there's lots of, you know, in this industry, as all industries, there's lots of egos flying around, isn't there? And people want to be right. And as we just discussed, that some people want to, tell clients that they know something when they don't actually know. They just want
Yeah,
to score some brownie points. So it must become sometimes quite you have to deal with so many people in so many
yeah.
different positions, and
Yes, I do.
you've got to try, you as the architect, you've got to try and keep everything on track, and people,
Yeah,
you've got to almost be like
yeah,
a mediator to all these different industries and people.
yeah. I mean, I now I've been doing this job, but the managing the practice for come around 5 years now. So I do this, but also I do have to, because I'm the specialist conservation architect in the practice, I still have to be at the coal face when it comes to, training the younger generation up in the practice, trying to get them interested in it. And like you say, juggling clients, contractors, project managers, Stroke England, archaeology, new biodiversity net gain stuff, building regulations. It does become quite exhausting, I guess, over the course of a project. But I
Mm,
think once you're once you're in for the long haul. I think we've got the problem I've got with the younger generation coming through the practice at the minute is that they want things to happen more quickly and don't understand the long process in terms of these, architecture doesn't happen overnight, especially the projects that we're working on. A lot of the projects are funded by NLHF, or we've got tight funding streams and we have tight deliverables. So I think learning to design within a budget is quite key. working out what's significant in terms of condition and what needs to be repaired and what could be done later is quite important. But ultimately, at the end of the day, communication, and I've got to say, I come across egos all the time, and that is not how you get people to do what you want. Um, if you
No.
want to have a smooth running project, you have to be able to communicate with people quite clearly. I'm from the Northeast and I'm quite honest, which I don't know if that's sometimes to my downfall because I will say a spade's a spade, but also I think it's quite helpful for clients to have someone who will tell them how it is and not, I'm not here to stroke their egos. I'm here really to make sure that they get the best out of the building they've got, but also I'm there to protect that bit of architecture, even though that it's owned by them. I'll put my foot down when I have to in terms of not agreeing with some of their moves, which
Yeah.
is also can be quite difficult to manage. But I'm
And
honest at the end of the day.
yeah, and you must have situations where the building is absolutely fascinating and you can't wait to get your hands on the building, but you may not be that keen working with the clients, or there might be
Yes.
something like that. When you think,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know, I'm not sure here.
Yeah. Yeah. Because yes, because you've got morals and you know, but I think taking the client to one side, I think the most important thing is obviously if it's especially building at risk, I think it's more important that we work with clients who can be quite difficult to help them get buildings off the risk register or make sure that it does have
Yeah,
a purposeful future. And if that means I have to lose sleep over it and then try and persuade the client that this is the right way to do it, I'll do it. But by all means necessary, I will try and help them get it through or get them to understand that's not quite the right way of doing it.
yeah, that's the thing,
But
and it's different.
yeah,
No, carry on.
ultimately, at the end of the day, you've got to be able to work as a team. So,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
yeah,
I know, and it must be difficult also, is because you've got lots of an amazing building, but you can have a tricky client, but the
hmm
client might be willing to spend money
yeah,
to and put money into that building that's at risk.
yeah,
So you've got to work with, and I think it's, as you say, it's about educating the client, isn't
yeah,
it? That's one
yeah,
of the fantastic wins that we get in our jobs, because a client may say, oh, don't like that front door, it's awful, don't like the moldings on it. And then you can say, hold on a minute, have and tell them a story about that door, for instance. And do you
yeah,
realize that was cut by hand and those locks were made just
yeah,
three roads across the
yeah.
street, or whatever it might be? And then they say, oh, okay, yeah, I quite like the door now.
Yeah. Yeah. On that note, on the door issue, I would say to them as well. I said, you do know if you get a new door, it probably only lasts 5 years, but if you repair
Exactly.
this one, it's going to last for another 50.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's always ways and means to try and get them to sway them to understand things. I think a lot of the times, not giving clients too much choice is also the right way to
Oh,
go.
absolutely.
Um,
That's a disaster waiting to happen if you, oh,
yeah,
we could give you 10 options, madam,
yeah,
sir.
yeah, yeah.
No.
So you've got two options.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
neither of them are the option you asked for, but you've only got
Yeah.
two of those.
Yeah, exactly. I know. It's so true though, isn't it? You, because ultimately they want, you're the expert, you're the specialist in this field. They want to be led by you. So therefore
Yeah,
you don't want to be giving clients too many options, because they'll just
yeah.
say, "Oh, I don't know." You
But
choose.
I'm also not afraid to say that I don't know things. You know,
Mm.
I don't know things. I don't know everything. This is what I was saying about you always wanting to learn and educate yourself. I might have a colleague, someone else in the industry who knows more about bricks and where bricks are made, and I would go to them and ask their opinion. I think people who ring fence knowledge in conservation shouldn't be allowed to be in conservation. I think everyone should be able to ask the questions and you should be prepared to help people as well. I've learned so much from the guys on site. That's the other thing, I'm quite approachable on site and I'll speak to any contractor. subcontractor, especially if they're a trades, a craftsman. And that you'll learn so much by just watching how they're doing things to then realize,
Yeah.
oh, I should have written this into the specification. He's done it anyway, but it would have been better if I'd added this or yeah. This and everyone's different. So you've got to walk into a room and within 5 minutes suss people out as well. So that's also
Oh, yeah.
quite a key skill in the
Uh,
industry.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really interested to find out what the process is for, let's say you have a really significant building, there needs to be sort of a modern adaptation made. It could be potentially quite controversial and technical. Take us through the process. What happens? The idea comes up and we want a modern extension on this 16th century building. And
Yeah.
we want to use it as a visitor centre, but we want it in stainless steel and whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And do the designs come? Yeah, take us through it. What from the start?
I can use a building as an example, which we've finished in the
Yeah.
last 5 years. The York Guildhall, medieval Guildhall, Grade 1, 2-star, 2 listed, and a brownfield site. So a significant complex of buildings sitting in the middle of the city centre of York with the river Ouse on one side, and then Lendal, which is a tight medieval street, on the other side of the site, and Mansion House. It's a landlocked site. Not many people know about the Guildhall. It's a medieval Guildhall. No one, it was used as mermaking. That's where the council offices were. The council offices moved out of there and then into the railway sheds, and it just been left to rot. They didn't know what to do with it. They'd done 2 RIBA competitions on it, but it'd already been through 2 iterations. Still no purposeful business plan. Still didn't know what to do with it. It went out to tender again. We would happen to win it. We're often the third architect on these sort of projects as well. Uh, we basically went through the process. We'd come up with this vision for them when we did the interview of how we might be able to get people through the building and how we might unlock it. Um, as I say, medieval Guildhall, Victorian offices, and this brownfield site. When the client got the project, they asked for an enhanced listing by Historic England, thinking it might be downgraded. Everything was upgraded. So the things which were grade 2 listed became 2-star. Obviously, the medieval Guildhall was always grade 1. There was a big block which wasn't listed that then became grade 2 listed. So they shot themselves in the foot. For us, what we did, sorry, go on.
No, sorry. Why did they buy the building in the first place? What was their intention?
They didn't buy the building; it was already their building.
Oh, okay,
So
right.
it was an asset which they had, which they'd outgrown in terms of their council offices.
Oh, I
It was
see.
always
Sorry.
it was the existing seat of power. The medieval Guildhall was always where mayor making. So the Lord Mayor was made, um, and it just didn't have a purpose for the 21st century because
I
all the
see.
council offices had moved out. The council chamber's still there, grade 2-star, it's a magnificent Victorian council chamber. Um, no access, disabled access, appalling. No access through the building. The facilities, as I say to most of my colleagues, toilets are quite important in buildings, and you're judged on your toilets.
Mm,
And there was no toilet facilities. There's no facilities for events in terms of kitchens, and wheelchair access or flat access throughout the site was appalling. And then this brownfield site had just been sat there, which used to be timber huts or hutments, and it's just sat there and it needed to be built on. So there were significant problems with that project. There was this tower, which actually wasn't a tower, but when I first started the project, maybe it had an inch crack in the tower, and by the time we were on site, you could put your hand through the crack in the tower. It had moved that much. Um, that project had all sorts of issues. We found, even though we'd done archaeology, or the client had done archaeology, we found 7 bodies. We found it all Friary Wall. There was a problem with archaeology. It happened in COVID. Um, we basically had come up with a scheme to unlock the site, make the Guildhall into a venue, change the order in which people came into the building in terms of visitor flow and circulation,
Mm.
move the toilets into the Grade 2 listed block, away from the basement, which flooded. So we had the flooding issues, so we had to deal with that. And then make the council offices and the new build block into worker places for startup um, businesses. Um, so it's a very successful project. It didn't have an operator on board until 3 months before, 6 months before practical completion. So that was also a challenge. But within the first month of them taking it on, I think nearly all the offices were let out, and it's moved from strength to strength in terms of events, weddings, markets, uh, um, conferences happen there all the time. And it's kind of unlocked that building. And the new build element of it, in terms of what we had to do, we had to increase the floor area enough for the business plan and the square footage to work in terms of how much lettable space you could do. So yeah, it was an interesting project, very challenging. All the materials, I think 90% of the materials came down the river on a barge. Um, yeah, it's one of those
Well,
ones which is successful.
and what about the budget? So when these projects start, is there a right? This is how much we're willing to spend.
Yes, and we went over the budget on that, but not by a lot. But because COVID happened, that project did overspend.
But who would
It
be
didn't.
advising them on the budget then? How would that? Because they necessarily wouldn't know how much things are going to cost,
No,
and the unknowns and the archaeology. If you're finding bodies in, then it's got
yeah,
to stop, and then you've got to excavate and
yeah, yeah. We were lucky in that instance. We were also lucky. COVID did actually help in terms of they could come in and do the archaeology during the COVID period. In terms of budget, they had a QS right at the beginning on board. Finding that QSs now aren't as good as they used to be, because more and more projects are coming in over budget from day one. Um, we've been in the game for quite a long time. We kind of know if you're where you're at in terms of, if you say, well, I'm expecting this and it's going to be 10 million. 10 million gets you nothing these days,
yeah.
especially on larger projects. And we're often advising clients. We obviously the contingencies against things. We also, because we've been doing it for so long, we're very good at flexing in terms of helping contractors rephase work if things come up across, in terms of opening up and once you start work on site. I think clients need to be mindful that you can never do enough opening up and investigations. If you can early get those in early doors, it kind of
Yeah.
it can form the design, but also mitigate the risk. Um,
So
yeah.
does the do they have to instruct a design team to start with? Because you've got to get a budget from the design team come in, and then the QS has to work with the design team to say, okay, how much is that going to cost, and
So
who
on,
comes first?
yeah. So in that instance, they had a business plan. So they knew how much revenue they wanted to bring in, and they also knew how much square footage they need to increase. So
Right.
basically, if you've got an existing building, it makes it quite easy. You could say, look, I can spend £2,000 a square meter on this, or £1,000 a square foot. And you can probably, back of the fact packet, work it out quite quickly,
Yeah.
and then add on it, and then add on a chunk, because you're always going to be short. Um, but often they've already had, their business people or their finance people have reviewed it before they even put it out to tender a feasibility. So we do a lot of feasibilities for clients, which then get priced, and then they become
Right.
real projects. Whether or not they come real projects that we get, or whether or not they come projects and other practices get. But a lot of clients, a lot of architects do feasibilities to help clients work out how much things are going to cost.
And I'm really interested because there'll be a lot of really good architects in the York area. How did you think you won that work? Why were you chosen?
I have asked a few clients why we win stuff recently. I don't know about that one in particular. I think we had the expertise and we had the vision to how to unlock it in that
Right.
particular instance. But one we won, myself and Helen was an interview that we were successful with. I did say, well, why did you pick us? I think personalities help. So clients have got to be, some of these projects are 7 years long, yeah. And
It's funny,
you're
isn't
going to have
it?
to like someone. You could not
Yeah.
see them every week, if not every other day. Am I going? Is that accent going to grate on me, or am I going to be able to put up with it? That's probably what they're thinking with me. But the other thing is that I think it depends. Someone said, "Oh, it's a recent one." I said, "Well, why did you pick us?" And they were like, "You were so enthusiastic, and we knew that obviously you've got the skills, but the fact that your enthusiasm for wanting to do it, we just thought it was quite infectious." And yeah, so
Yeah,
it, uh,
I think you're right. It is personality, isn't it? You've got to, I don't necessarily think you've got to instantly like somebody, but you've got to think, could I work with that individual?
yeah,
Do I like their principles and their methods? And then that's one tick that needs to be, one box that needs to be ticked. Then I really believe it's that enthusiasm and that passion that
yeah,
comes across. And the thing is that if you naturally enthusiastic and passionate about something, you're not actually trying to sell. You're not trying to sell your company or your product. You're just really interested in
yeah,
what you're looking at and what you're
yeah,
discussing. And you sort of get
I,
carried away
yeah.
because you, as well as I do, in this industry, the more we get involved with buildings, the more excited we get about them, I think is a real key. And it's a nice thing, though, to have because it's very natural, isn't it? You're
It
just
is,
so
but I don't know.
enthusiastic.
Yeah, I don't know if that's sometimes it's too much for some people. But I
Do
think
you
sometimes people,
really?
yeah, I do. I think some people
Ah.
want someone who is more
Oh,
measured
it's
sometimes, that quieter rather than, oh, you could do this. I think I also challenge clients probably a little bit too much because I don't think sometimes they're ambitious enough. So I think it can work. I think it can work for both ways. It depends on the
mm,
individual who's making the decision at the end of the day. But I often say when I go to interviews, because they'll see me from the beginning of the project to the end, which is unusual given I am the managing director of the firm. Um, and I often see projects, especially on site, because I deal with a lot of site issues quite pragmatically, I would say. And that's one of my skills. But I think certain clients might not expect to see you from start to finish. But also, I will say to them, you will see us, so you've got to be able to get on with us. Otherwise, this is a teamwork thing. You've got to be
mm,
able to work with us, and we've got to be able to work with you. Whether or not that works, I don't know. But I'd rather lose a project because they don't want to go with someone who's boring, if you ask me. But I'd rather be with a client who has the same level of energy and enthusiasm as I do. I don't
yeah,
want to be dragging them along. I'd rather them, it was both challenging each other. That's what
yeah,
makes it fun. Otherwise, what's the point?
absolutely. Yeah. Can we discuss your other project, which was the Birmingham Roundhouse?
Yes.
Because
Well,
I'm
that's it.
fascinated
That's an
by that.
interesting one.
Yeah, I googled it yesterday and had a look, and
Yeah.
yeah, it looks really interesting. So yeah, tell us what happened there. What was your involvement?
So we won this. So basically, normally projects have a break clause at RIBA stage 3. So after planning, often clients sometimes retender the project. So this was retendered, and we didn't take it to planning and the civil and consent. Someone else did. Um, But what they had done, they were going to be taking down more walls, and we came up with a solution structurally to not have to do as much invasive work or repairs. So I think that's one of the reasons why we won the project. So we took it on from RIBA stage 4 onwards. And then we did another, once we'd finished that work, we then did a separate appointment for doing offices on the first floor for the National Trust. So this was a combined charitable trust with the Canals and Rivers Trust and the National Trust to create the Birmingham Roundhouse. And it's their Midlands flagship, um, you know, venue or building. What's interesting about this, they had everything wrong with it in terms of it was underused, not on the map, um, problems with access for people in wheelchairs. The business plan needed to work in terms of they were doing a lot of, I think there's a bike repair shop there and canoe hire area, and then this little cafe as well. Um, so it was a really interesting project working with the National Trust, but obviously I wasn't involved in it until the end of RIBA stage 4 and the beginning of RIBA stage 5 on site. We had some internal changes in terms of how the practice was run. And this was one of the ones I had to pick up last minute to try and get over get it through construction. I often have to firefight on projects if staff members change or if clients change, and then pick things up without having much background knowledge, and then making sure that you're keeping to program. So we work quite closely with Kia on this job. Now Kia, it was the civils side of Kia, not the building side of Kia on this.
All
So
right.
again, it was quite interesting in terms of dealing with the different characters who were used to digging canals and repairing more heavy duty, drainage channels than people who were dealing with bricks and mortar and window repairs. But it's a
Yeah.
fantastic looking building. At the end of the day, we upgraded it thermally, fixed the structure. It's a really good creative hub now for Birmingham.
And can you just tell the audience who don't know, not familiar with the Birmingham Roundhouse, so that what it was for, how old it is?
Yeah, it's a grade 2 star, um, listed. It used to be where the horses used to come in terms of, it's one of the major landmarks of the Birmingham Canal network. Um, as I said, it was a transformational, it was a pioneering partnership between National Trust and Canals and Rivers Trust, and it was supported by what was then called the National Lottery Heritage Fund Heritage Enterprise.
Mm.
Um, it was built in 1874 as a stables and store for the Birmingham Corporation, and it's a distinctive horseshoe-shaped building, um, which was
Mm.
obviously it's been um, reimagined for the 21st century from really for people to explore the city. Um, it had quite a lot of inappropriate adaptations in the 20th century, um, and it needed a new roof, major internal and structural works, um, really in the cobbled courtyard, everything, the slumps, and you couldn't really move across the courtyard. And ultimately, M&E and services needed to be
Mm.
upgraded there. Um, and like I say, we were architect from stages 4 to 6, but even the stuff which we'd got, the previous architect got planning and civil building consent for, there was things we had to change because we'd come across things or what they'd got permission for didn't quite work. Um, you know, ideally not having to take down as much as was first anticipated is always quite a good thing. But
Yeah.
but if you ever get a chance to go, it's a magnificent looking building. It was really good to work on. I love
Uh,
Birmingham anyway, so
yeah. And how is it generating income now?
So the National Trust, there's lettable spaces, so you can let offices there. There's a cafe, or there was a cafe run from there. There is small businesses, and then it's the hub for the Midlands National Trust as well. So their
I
offices,
see.
that's their main offices as well. Yeah. Yeah, it's a
It's
really good project.
wonderful. And that's the good thing about your work. You never know when that phone rings, you never know where it could be.
You never know. You never know. I had someone ringing up from York this week, someone from Suffolk. Yeah, it's all over the country.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, and just on my notes I've got here about tell us a bit about the John Shannon Conservation Award, and that was with the Guildhall, wasn't it? But
That's
what is
right.
that?
I don't know if that's a local award. I can't remember. That won quite a few. The big award on the Guildhall was actually the what we won was the SIPSI award, which is to do with sustainability. Now
Ah,
that project, the Guildhall project, it has a water source, a river water source heat pump. Now trying to fit that in a grade one listed, grade two star listed project, it's, that sort of level of sustainability is unheard of. We lifted the floor, we put underfloor heating in. You name it, we changed it in that building, but you can't
mm,
always tell. The other thing, which is interesting in terms of because we won that conservation award, we put in a new opening within the grade one listed medieval wall to be able to get the toilets to work. Now, trying to get that past historic England was
yeah.
quite challenging, but also it unlocked the whole site. The toilet, honestly, the toilet position unlocked the whole site, and getting that level access for people in wheelchairs through was quite significant. But yeah, it's also a good one to look at because it's to prove to clients not to be afraid of change, and also to try and get people to understand just because it's grade one listed doesn't mean to say you can't alter it. It's about how you justify it. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It must sometimes be a difficult decision because you will to make a building pay for itself and to modernize it in certain ways but still keeping it historically significant, you must have situations where you do have to remove some historic fabric
Oh
to
yeah.
to be able to facilitate certain things. So it must be
Yeah.
sometimes it must be awful because you know it's got to happen
Yeah.
and it is right for the building, but when you actually
Yeah.
see all that being taken down or
It
removed.
is, but this is why the statement is significant conservation management plan. It actually helps inform where those key moves
Yeah,
are. So we wouldn't. It is. It's a moral dilemma actually making some decisions on clients' behalf, but also trying to get them to understand you can't just whack in a new floor. It will ruin the space.
yeah,
Um, but that's the price you pay for the fact that the building's going to stand up for another 100 years. So
yeah.
this refurbishment for the Guildhall. It was really a 50 to 100 year. In my lifetime, I'm hoping it won't have to be repaired or refurbished again. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, that's right. And they've got to earn their keep, haven't they? These buildings, otherwise
yeah,
they fall apart.
yeah. And
Um,
we've got a few on the at-risk register that we're hoping to take off. So that's yeah.
yeah. And what are your current projects at the moment?
So one of the big ones, which is one of the most significantly funded NLHF projects at the minute, is the Winter Gardens in Great Yarmouth. It's a
Ah,
grade two star listed glass house, um, which is significant because it's the last remaining glass house, Victorian glass house, cast in wrought iron and glass in its original location on the seafront. Um, and it's significant because we're trying to make it into a event space, food and beverage. It was always an event space, but it's going to have food and beverage offer inside. There's planting, there's people, there's zero net carbon, there's sustainability, there's glass. You can imagine it's probably one of the most complex briefs that we've had to ever deal with in terms of lots of ticking of boxes and lots of how they want to use the space as well. And then obviously Historic England have got some ideas about what things should be. The good thing
And
about
what?
that project was we did significant amount of historic research, and it's one of those projects which is being photographed to death on postcards. So I've got like a collection of my own historic archive on that building.
I'm just Googling it now. I want to see what this
Yeah,
looks like.
it's,
Great Yarmouth.
yeah, Winter Gardens.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
on the Heritage Risk Register.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I'm
It's
looking
owned
at
by the
photos now.
client. Yeah,
Whoa. It's a bit like the Crystal Palace would have been.
it is. Yeah. So that's one project. That's the Grade 2 star, and then the other project, which is going through planning and listed building consent at the minute, hopefully, and it's been lodged, is Symphonia Smith Square. Um, it's a Grade 1 listed Baroque church in the middle of central London, near in Westminster. It's known as the Queen Anne's Footstool because of the shape of the building. It's also at Heritage at Risk Register. It's got some significant stone repairs. So you can see the sort of typology that we're working with is not just all stone buildings or Victorian buildings, but there's cast iron, wrought iron, glass.
Mm,
It's ironic because one of my passions is concrete, and I don't often get to do that. So, but yeah, anything which needs repurposing or reordering, the Symphonia Smith Square project is really to do with visitor flow and getting people in and out of a venue, but also how the food and beverage offer works in that building as well needs to work harder. There's a lot of
right.
space, but it's just not working hard enough. And you can't get the flow of people through the building as well. So
And how original is the building?
that that's another thing. It was bombed. It burned down in the Blitz. It's also been bombed by the suffragettes. So that building was due to be demolished and made into a car park, the Symphonia Smith Square one, in the 1960s, and then it was saved, and that's the fabric which is there. And the inside is all from the 1960s. But it's a very good. It's been very well executed. I wouldn't, just because it's 1960s replication of what was there, I wouldn't say it's any less significant. Um,
And do you remember who the architect was originally? If it's Baroque,
oh, now
wouldn't
you're
be
asking
Wren.
me.
Is it?
No, but is someone, you know what, I could not remember. I should know this off by heart.
Because he built so many.
But
How many churches did he build in that area? It was significant, wasn't it?
it definitely wasn't him, though. It didn't even come up on their website.
Oh, not to worry. But so there wasn't much. There was stuff from the 60s, and then so you're keeping some of that in, but it's not like you have.
Yeah, we're hardly touching it. It's
Right.
uh, although Historic England might not think that. But altering the staircases, that's the significant move. We're building a new ramp externally to get wheelchair users in, because at the minute they come in like a back side door. Um, the thing is with those sort of clients is that they want the wow factor, but the wow factor is the existing building. So it
Yeah.
doesn't need to have anything flashy, really. It just needs to work right. Almost as if they don't need to uh it doesn't need that many changes because you don't really want to the acoustics in there is really good as well. Um so yeah, it's one of those ones which is again quite a difficult one, but with a great client and a great purpose, so um
And
yeah.
how old is the staircase that you've got to alter?
So some of them Victorian, some of them are 20th century. So
Right.
they're all different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of it, you know, whether or not it's in plan and consent at the minute, whether or not we get permission to do it. Um, I'm hoping
And
that we
then
do
when
because we're making the right moves, I think.
Yeah, and then when you have let's say you want to alter that staircase, then are you supposed to recommend certain craftspeople that can actually do the work? Is that your job as well?
No. So what we'll do is that all this stuff, if we're doing detailed design, we'll draw it up and we'll come up with a method statement of how we can salvage some of the fabric and rebuild it with some of it. So what's one thing we're doing. Um, but we obviously it goes off this in this case it'll go to a main contractor and we will expect method statements and knowing who the people are, who the crafts people are. Um, yeah.
And then you'll have a decision. Will you then be brought into the discussion to say, okay, the main contractor's got company A, B, and C. So, Faye, what do you think? Who would be most suitable? Is that part of your remit?
Yeah, and they don't often do that. They'll say this is them. They'll pick the subcontractor. We don't often pick the subcontractor.
And then, because I'm interested, then how would they know if that subcontractor is suitable for the type of designs that you're proposing?
So they wouldn't get onto the shortlist if they hadn't got historic building experience in terms of the main contractor. And
Yeah.
then they often have a list of subcontractors who they work with, who are obviously, again, they have to go through the same remit. Have they worked on historic buildings? Then the specifications are written really tightly so that you ask for shop drawings, method statements. They have to be able to justify how they're going to go about implementing this work. Um, so there's systems in place. Um, yeah.
And how are
So
you finding the level of skill, craftsmanship that's available?
I think it's depleting. I think everyone in the industry knows that. I think we should be training people up.
Mm.
If I was to go back now, I would probably go into a trade. If I was to look back on my career, I love my job, but I think I would love to know a trade and actually do a trade. Either stonemason or, something that you could be on site and you actually physically see what you're doing at the end of the day.
Mm.
But I don't think we're training enough young people. I think a lot of people think, unfortunately, it's the way the world with influencers and things, and think they can make their money that way. But I think um, blue collar work and craftsmen's going to be sought after. Yeah, I can't do that.
It was definitely going to be, but our attitude. I was in Sweden about last month, I think it was, or this beginning of this month, and I was out there to do some presenting, and I did 3 or 4 presentations, and I was asking the architects over there what it was like, and it's such a different attitude. They
Mm.
are really enthused by what's happening in Scandinavia, and there's a real buzz about conservation work and young people coming into the industry. It's something that we don't. Every time I speak to somebody working in the UK, we don't have the same. I spoke to Philip Gaishes, and he was quite enthused and excited about the future for his master plasterer.
Mm.
But most of the time, and if I'm asked a question, I'm going to say it's the same as you. I'll be saying the
But I'm
same as you.
seeing it. I'm seeing it on a building site. So it's not like you would normally have. Say, for instance, the Union Chapel, which is on site at the minute, Grade 2 star, Grade 1 listed, also on the risk register. Chapel just down the road from the office. We've been working on their master plan since 2015. This is the second phase of the first phase of their master plan. They only had one apprentice on site. It's not,
Mm.
and the guys who are there, who are great, the bricklayer, so much knowledge. He's at retirement age. And I'm like, well, who's coming through? Who are you training up? And it's not, maybe in Scandinavia, they've got more enthusiasm and they've got a better training schemes in terms of getting younger people through the books. But I think we're not, yeah. I don't know if it's the way education's turned out at the minute, but I don't think there's as many young people coming through. That's also my concern is that there's going to be things, we've been talking about craftsmen being a dying art for maybe a decade now. but I don't see us doing anything quick enough
Yeah.
to bring the next generation on.
I've mentioned this so many times with previous guests on this show, and it's the fact that it's changed. When I left school, you had a choice of going to university if you were
Yeah.
clever enough, and if you
Yeah.
weren't, you went into a trade, and there was
Yeah.
no in between. There
Yeah.
was no stacking shelves at Tesco's for a really good hourly rate.
Mm.
And there was no, to be honest, if I left school now, I would be pushed into going into university, even though
Yeah.
I wasn't at that type of, I'm not that academic. So therefore,
Yeah.
that's the big difference, I think, is that, for the likes of me and my friends, we were carpenters, plumbers, bricklayers, and
Yeah.
that's it. And that's changed so much, hasn't it?
I think also I think class has got something to do with it as well. And I think how people perceive the people doing those jobs. But you know what? They're going to earn more than you and I in architecture if they go into a trade now. Bricklayers can earn a
Mm.
pretty petty. I think people look down on them in terms of, oh, as people who have no education do it. But in actual fact, you have to be really quite highly skilled to do these jobs. And I think
Yeah.
our perception, how they're perceived by the outside industries and other professions, I think is detrimental. I think we should be more thankful that we've got people who can do these jobs.
Yes. Yeah. I think the
That's the
tables will
working
turn.
class for me. That's the working
Yes,
class for me. So
same here, and I'm hoping that there's got to be definitely has to be more training available, and enthusiasm. And
I think the curriculum at schools have something to do with it as well.
yeah,
Because when I was younger, we did, technology. We had to do woodwork. We had to do home economics. You had to do those practical things. One school had a car workshop. I don't know if that's that non-vocation that vocational stuff is even taught now. I think there's too much emphasis on maths, English, and science, whereas I think some people aren't built like that. I think there should be
no,
the other skills that they should be taught. Woodwork, you know.
definitely the curriculum is so. It's still in the 1940s and 50s, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
shocking.
still there, and nobody's prepared to actually change and shift and go,
Yeah,
hold on a minute, the world is different now. My daughter, incredibly bright, but not academically bright, but her brain is
yeah,
incredible at problem solving and be able to put patterns and shapes together. And she would be amazing, a skilled worker or something that is just not conventional.
yeah.
And the schools she goes to, they can't really
No,
cater for her. She's just, oh, you're a bit
yeah,
different. What do we do with you? you know.
yeah. But
And I
I
was the
mean
same.
that goes along with AI. People frown upon you using AI these days, but I think you either get on board or you get behind. And I think we're way
Absolutely.
behind compared to China and places like that. We need to be up in our game nationally,
I know.
internationally, otherwise we're going to fall behind. Well, we already are behind.
We're already behind, and it's on the curriculum at 6 years old in China, AI,
Exactly. Yeah.
and we're still teaching Latin and French in in
Yeah. But
schools.
imagine what AI that the interface between AI and conservation, how that works. Has anyone started to think about, you know, it- I would love to have a client who could afford to do a proper BIM model of their buildings so that you tag something and you could click on it, you know when it was installed. But BIM was sold to us as this, last and legacy of people to be able to manage their assets. But no client can afford for you to log everything and have a proper BIM model. It's like everything's sort of half-arsed, as I would say,
Yeah,
rather than fully thought about.
I
But
know.
imagine if you could do that, you could click, oh, that was installed by Joe Bloggs on this date and this time, and this is where it came from. This was the specification. You just press a button. But I don't know if any other conservation architects are doing that out there. Well, I would love to see how they've managed to get that implemented by their clients.
Yeah, I know. It would be great to have something like that. I think it would be, especially heritage buildings. to bring AI into it. There's got to be a way. It's going to be, as you say, this is happening now.
Yeah.
We've got to jump on board or be left behind. And that
Yeah.
includes our industry,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So,
Thomas Archer was the architect for St. John
ah,
Smith's Hall. There you
oh,
go.
great. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. I will look him up. This is really good. For listeners, Faye, who want to learn more about conservation architecture and
Yeah.
what would you recommend? Where would they go?
I think if you're interested in history, so say you've done your degrees and you've a lot of, and the good thing about architecture degrees, the universities which I have affiliation with, and we do a lot with certain um uh universities. We work quite closely with Nottingham, and I came from Dundee, so there's a lot of good courses. I think depending on what you want to sort of specialize in, and I think when you're young, you need to try and do a bit of everything before you
Yeah,
decide what you might want to go down. And not necessarily that people want to specialize in stuff, but I think if you're doing conservation and you want to do conservation, you kind of have to pick that as your speciality, and you kind of need to want to learn on a daily basis. I think the RIBA do some really good conservation courses. I think if you want to become a specialist conservation architect, I think it's beneficial to go and do another diploma or another degree in it. The
yeah,
Architectural Association used to offer that. It used to be a good program. I think they're about to start it up again. Bath University do a really good course. But ultimately, I think if you want to be the best and learn as much as possible, I think doing that, unfortunately, doing that extra bit of higher education is quite key. Otherwise, you have to try and get into a practice that does this sort of work on a day-to-day basis, so you get that sort of exposure to these
right.
kind of buildings and you can learn that way. But ultimately, experience is quite key in terms of conservation. I've been doing this
Yeah,
25 years now. And like I say, I don't know everything, and I would fully admit sometimes I don't know everything. But I think reading, being able to read up on things, and it's not just a 9 to 5 job. You have to be able to want to go and read a book on how to lay bricks or lime plaster. You've got to be able to do that not within work hours, because during work hours you've got deliverables to meet. So a lot of it's extracurriculum stuff. If
mm,
you're interested in history, you will love doing conservation because there's so much history involved in it,
yeah.
and
And what's the
unpicking
appetite, do you
buildings.
think? Yeah, absolutely. What's the appetite for the younger generation to? I still there's a big appetite for young people to study architecture, and
Yeah.
become architects. I wonder what the percentage is of people entering that are really keen on conservation architecture.
I think that people think conservation is purist. I think it's how we're perceived. So when I say purist, I mean like the SPAB way of doing things in terms of
Yeah,
specifying the right mortar and things like that. I would say the stuff that we do is more creative conservation. I like to term it as, because we're repurposing buildings. It's not just about, have I picked the right tile? Is
yeah,
this the right timber? I think this is more, you have to be quite clever in terms of how you put in new interventions in historic buildings and have that respect for them at the same time. So, and I don't, without singing BFF's phrases too much, I don't think there's many architecture firms out there do it as successfully as what we do. Um, there are some who are quite interesting, but there is that purist element where if you want to go down the route and spend 5 hours
mm,
repair and plaster, then my firm's definitely not for you. We can do it, but that's not the exciting bit of conservation. I think the most exciting bit is rescuing the buildings, repurposing it, giving it a new lease of life, and at the
yeah,
end of the day, it functions, but also looks good and lasts long. So that robustness.
mm,
So I think I think what my worry is that there's a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to do that, but actually don't follow through. They think that they'll just get the title and not realize you actually have to do the work. You can't
Yes.
just, you know, I can't just get my reaccreditation because I have to I have to reapply every 5 years. So it's not just oh, I got my certificate. That's me set for life. You've got to evidence that you're learning as you go along.
Mm.
And yeah, that's what makes it interesting. At the end of the day, you got to move with the times as well.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fascinating actually learning all about
yeah,
what you're doing and your journey, your projects, and just your commitment to sensitive, sustainable conservation. It's been
yeah. Thank you.
really great. But before we wrap up, where can our listeners learn more about Foley Fisher? And do you have LinkedIn accounts or Instagram? What do you like on all
Yeah,
the social
we have
sites?
we have all the social stuff, whether or not it's all up to date, because we end up uh, we've got a website which is not too out of date. We've just recently relaunched it. Um, if you look at us up at burrellfoleyfisherarchitects.com, you'll be able to find us there. We're on Instagram, the BFF Architects. You'll find us on LinkedIn. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we do a lot of interesting things. I think people will be fascinated. We're not very good at PR, because ultimately it's bad. I suppose we're caring too much about the building to have time to promote ourselves. I think
No,
our
it's
buildings
good.
speak for themselves. So
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be good when I'm next. I go to London quite a bit, but when I'm next
yeah,
up in town, and I give you a bit of notice, it'd be lovely to pop in if you're there. When you're there, but
yeah,
just pop in and
yeah,
come in for a
yeah. If you
cup
give
of
me
tea and just.
what, yeah, what I want is people. So I took our lot round the Union Chapel. I think heritage tours are quite interesting, and getting what I've been doing is getting the younger generation in the office to actually show their own colleagues around their sites as
Oh, nice.
as a tour, to try and get them to understand how you're selling it to your peers within the practice.
Yeah,
So come and I'll show you around our sites. We've got plenty on the all over the country actually at the minute. So yeah, welcome to come and join. See us in the
brilliant.
flesh.
Yeah, I come up, and yeah, who knows? I can come up and even give your team, a mini presentation on the work that I do as well.
No, that'd be really interesting. It's really good.
Come in
Yeah,
for a lunchtime or something and present while they're eating their sandwiches.
yeah. No, definitely be up for that.
That's great. Thanks again, Faye.
Yeah, thanks,
And yeah,
Vincent.
been
Really
a
good
real pleasure.
conversation. Yeah,
Yeah,
really good
and
conversation.
wonderful. And hopefully we'll
Thank
catch
you.
up face to face soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks for now. Okay, bye bye.
Bye.